My name's Sasha Pete, and I'm joined by a fantastic individual. This man represented our country very, very proudly. Boy, did he have an engine. A legend of the NSL, and particularly the club that I supported in the mid-90s. None other than the captain Socceroo himself, Mr. Paul Wade. Wadey, thank you for joining us for this conversation.
It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we have many things in common, especially the club that you supported.
Tell us, Paul, how did you fall in love with our great game?
Well, I had no choice really, because in the street that I grew up in St Helens, big rugby league town, because I was born in England, came out here when I was 11. That's all they did. They played football. And if you didn't play football, you didn't have any friends. And if you had a ball, you were the best. People, we often went to somebody's house who had the ball and said, is he coming out to play? And the mum might have said, no, he's sick. And we'd say, well, can we have his ball anyway, please? And that was it. You know, you really didn't care about who had the ball. It was all about the ball. So whether it be in and I've looked up Google Earth and I look at where we trained. I mean, had a kick around. And I worked out that it was 7 meters long by 5 meters wide, grass. The rest of it, it was right beside a pub. There was a pub car park that everybody played on when there was enough of us to get around, once the cars had left, and usually pubs closed on a Sunday. But that was our Wembley Stadium. That was our Anfield. That was our Goodison Park, Old Trafford. It didn't matter what everybody else was doing. That was our moment. And there could have been 50,000 people watching us. That's just the imagination we had. And I think that's why we loved the game so much and were willing to put the time in, because we just loved it.
Beautiful. And what brought your parents to migrate to Australia? Obviously, you came over, like you said, as a young boy. So what was that urge?
£10 poms, Sasha. £10 poms. Australia was looking for skilled workers. My dad was an electrical engineer, so with Pilkinson's ACI Glass in Dandenong South. He was there. They were, I think they were producing glass floating as opposed to whatever other way they did it. And he was a part of that team that designed the whole systems and made it all happen. So I grew up in the southeast of Melbourne in Dandenong South. And I remember, because we were right on the edge of Dandenong South, like there was bush right there. But I remember seeing all these trees with these massive spiders on them and coloured birds flying around in the sky, not in cages. This was an amazing place for a 10-year-old who was just, I didn't play football. I arrived here in October, and it was my mum that dragged me down to a football club in Dandenong City, and said, yes, you will play sport. But up until then, it was an amazing place, and it was warm. In October, you can imagine, I've just come from the north of England, St Helens, where it's -2, and that's the top, to a place where it was 25, sweltering. So yeah, what a transition. I do remember leaving where my mum and dad grew up and all the family lived in Barnsley in Yorkshire, and I've got a vivid memory of us driving away and the whole family standing outside one of those, you know, like Coronation Street. Yeah. You know, all the houses are together, and we were going down the hill, and my mum was looking the other way, and she was crying, and everybody was crying as we left. But to a 10 or 11-year-old, it was like, I'll be back. Don't worry about it. Little did I know that I was never coming back, other than going back for a holiday. But it was, I look back as one of those moments, go, wow, my mum and dad were so brave, as probably yours and everybody else who has a different background, just amazingly brave to do what they did.
So you've come into the country, you've landed in Dandenong, and you're having a kick at this local club. You developed a serious engine. When did that start to develop in your, let's say, teens, you're going through primary school, high school. When did you start realizing that you've got a little bit of an engine?
You don't, you just play and play and play and play, and you just grow into it. I know that's a cliche, but you do. You just accept it as part of what you bring to a football team. But there was one defining moment where I think I was playing, it might have been for Doveton, which is the next suburb closer to Melbourne. And I remember at the end of the game, because it was mud that deep, and you could come off the ground. You didn't know who was playing for who because everyone was covered in mud, because we loved it and that's what we did. But the coach picked me up in the dressing room like so and said, "Boys, this is the way I want you to come off the ground. Have a look at him. He's totally exhausted. He's given everything for this football team." And it was embarrassing at the time, but I took that on board. Well, maybe not consciously, but it was one of those moments where you go, you know what? That's what I bring to a football team, because I wasn't quick and I wasn't skillful, but I could head a ball and run. And from that moment on, I thought, that's the difference I'll make to every football team that I played for. There are so many good players that didn't make it, and it's because they discovered girls and alcohol, and work was more important. But all I wanted to do was be my best on that day. And I think we all get carried away with, you've got to be on that career path. If you're not skills acquisition program at the age of 8 years of age, you're not going to make it. Well, glad they didn't tell me that, Sasha.
So who were some of the junior clubs that you played for as you were growing up?
Dandenong City, Doveton. I think about 15 or 16, I went to they were called Peninsula Soccer Club. You know, it's not one of those that stand out to me. And I don't even know whether it exists anymore, but it was linked to a team that was playing in the state league called Paran Slavia, and they had a reserve team. And that was my transition from juniors to seniors. And this is how it happened. This is how weird it can be. You know, you can be on a career path, but sometimes you just happen to be in the right place at the right time. The senior team went on strike for more money. And the reserves had to go and play for the senior team. So it meant the under-16s had to go and play for the reserves. So it was at that moment we just went from kicking a ball around with our own age group to, wow, you're going to get lumps kicked out of you by these grown men. So it's funny, that was a transition. I happened to be in the right place at the right time.
So, and do you remember your first team debut, at what level that was, and how old were you?
No, I don't. I do remember and still admire the players that I played with, because all of a sudden we were playing on grounds that didn't have a picket fence around it.
Okay. That
had stands, that you could have the touchline that was straight, and there was grass on it that was smooth, and you had dressing rooms. Do you know what I mean? And I'll never forget the players that I was playing with. I still talk to them. Jimmy Williams, Jimmy Rooney, as I was growing up there as well. Just players that I went, wow, look at that. Jamie Payton, John Eisendorn, people might remember them. They went on to play at the highest level for Heidelberg. Just amazing people in my eyes, because I'm 16 years of age looking at them.
Oh, brilliant. You make your way up. I think we're now tracking on to, I think, around mid-80s. You had a season at Green Gully in the, I think back then it would have been the state league. Tell us how that transfer occurred.
You know what? Again, I was in the right place at the right time. And there's even a transition from the old NSL to the national team. Again, I was in the right place at the right time, but I had to be. I transferred from Paran Slavia to Croydon City Soccer Club in the state league. So we used to play against the South Melbournes and Melbourne Crochets and all that. But Jimmy Rooney played in the middle of the midfield with me. And he's just come down from Heidelberg. He played 99 times for the Socceroos.
Yes. Yeah.
But to me, he was the most gifted footballer and smallest footballer that I've ever played with. He could nutmeg anybody anywhere. He would do it on his own goal line. He was that comfortable with the ball at his feet, which is very unlike Scots people, right? But he was an absolute genius. He got the job at Green Gully. They just come into the NSL. I think it was when we split the...
Southern and Northern, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how they got in. And Jimmy Rooney got the coaching job. So I'm playing in the middle of midfield with him, just working my backside off, making him look good, or vice versa. Anyway, he took me there, and that's how I got my start in the NSL. I just happened to be playing next to the coach who got the job.
And I think the year after you transferred to Juventus, and you had 2 seasons there. And one of those seasons, you guys won the league. You had a pretty nifty side, because I remember at the time I'd barrack for Footscray Just, and
oh, did you?
Yes. So you pipped us. You pipped us in the last final, I think, quite convincingly, where that team was probably one of the strongest. But some of the boys. So was Margaritas coach there at Juventus?
Yeah, Johnny Margaritas. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And the likes of Fab Incantalupo, Peter Lewis, yourself, Yaka Banovic, Brian Brown, Mickey Peterson, Joe Sweeney, Eddie Campbell, Mehmet Durakovic, young Mehmet Durakovic, Andrew Zinni. So what was that change room like?
They say that happiness is on this side of a goal, whatever goal you want to achieve. And I totally agree with that. The reason we won that league, sure, we had a little bit of luck, but the reason we did it was because of the enjoyment we got of being in each other's company and playing as well as we could all the time. I mean, in the final, when we beat Sydney City, Eddie Thompson was the coach. There were so many Socceroos in that team. And we had one, Mickey Peterson. Sure, Jakubanovic had played. Did he play for Derby? Something can be corrected on that. He played at a higher level, but the rest of us, I mean, Brian Brown had played in Scotland, but the rest of us were just hard-working, got on famously. And that's why we won the league. So happiness is on this side of your goal. Don't think that working hard and being lots of games and winning it is going to bring you happiness, because it won't necessarily, because the next goal starts and you start being miserable again. So that was the key for me. And you're right, we won it. And I remember the president of the club, Mr. Schiavello, I'd be corrected on that, Schiavello Furniture. He came up to us before that final series and said, if you win this competition, I'll take you all to Italy. I feel like that. Yeah, right. Good on you. Well done. Well, we won it, and he did. And we played against...
That would be nice.
Yeah, we played against AS Roma and got smashed 7-0. Some of the players couldn't go because they had full-time jobs. We were on it part-time. But, wow, we went to Italy and played. Boniek was playing for them. And that was a whole new level again. You know, playing them in their massive stadium in front of, I don't know, 200 people, and they probably didn't have to pay to get in, because we weren't exactly the biggest team in the world, were we? But yeah,
what an experience! That's quite nice. How did so? What made the move across to South Melbourne? Because you spent a number of seasons there. I think was it over 200 games? But yeah, many seasons. So talk to me about why'd you leave Juventus and why South Melbourne?
I left Juventus because I went to Len McKendry was the coach, and he was the reason. Honestly, he was the reason that I transitioned in '85 at the end of that season when we won it to the national team, because he saw so much in what each individual did, and just emphasize, right, they're your strengths. You make that work in your team. So even though we didn't win it, the number of games that we won and tore teams apart was because of him giving us direction, clear direction. And one of them was, when you get that ball, you look to play it forward. He did it with Charlie Egan and Dougie Brown. Do you remember them two?
Yeah,
up front for Hellas.
Yeah,
and he did it with us. Get it and play it forward. He said, that's a spectator ball, and that's for the spectators. I want you to kill as many people in the middle of the park, cut them out with one pass. And that's what we did. We had that in mind all the time. We were brilliant at set pieces. He used to call them gold dust. And it's true. You might be having a shocker, but if you get all your free kicks right, bingo, you get one, you win 1-0. So we had so much discipline and structure that I'd never seen before. So we were wouldn't say we were ordinary players, but we weren't Socceroos. But we had this, we were on the same wavelength, play it forward. He didn't want us to whack it up the other end of the ground, furthest from the truth. Keep the ball on the floor, but play it forward. And opposition teams were always turning around, running back towards their own goal. Because if they didn't close us down quick enough, we played it forward. And as soon as we played it forward, we all supported it. Such a simple thing, but if you're all on the same wavelength, you've made the runs, timed the runs way before the guy who played it gets it. Easy. Sounds easy, right?
So this is circa around the same time that you get called up for the second Australian side. I'm sure that's just as proud of a moment, whether it's full cap international for the A side or playing in the B side. So walk us through that process. This is the similar time frame where you start getting selected for the Socceroos.
Yeah, I think I got my first gig for a B team. I could be corrected on this, but was it 1984 in Canberra? I really don't know, and that's not because I've done so many wonderful things. I just can't remember.
Yeah, so
yeah, and it was freezing cold and it was raining, and Alan Davidson had a seizure that day, and that's strangely what I can remember. You know, I remember it being cold in the middle of Canberra, but I don't remember the game or the fact that I pulled the green and gold on or anything like that. But because the first team, they were playing in those qualifiers to get to the 86 World Cup. I remember 85 when we played Scotland. So it really wasn't about us. We were just there to see if one or two of us could step up. But I remember it because Alan Davidson had a seizure that day. So, yeah, a very uneventful start to an international career. Can't even remember who we're playing against. Maybe China. I'll have to look all these things up. You've caught me out here, mate.
It's and so when is it that you're part of the Australian squad? What campaign was it where you felt, okay, now I'm actually part of this Aussie squad and I'm feeling like I belong? Because I'm sure at the start nearly all players are on the fringe, and then maybe you can tell us about those times where you felt you were on the fringe of the Aussie squad.
I think one thing I can always tell people: never assume anything. Never feel comfortable with being given the honour of playing for a club, any club. Never, ever assume that you're going to be playing the next game. Within yourself, have the confidence, breed off what you've just achieved in a game. Love it. But don't go blasting it around. Don't go assuming that the next camp that comes up, you'll be playing. I think if you can do that, you'll be well on your way. And I never, ever... we used to get the squad in the Sydney Morning Herald, Peter Desira.
Oh, wow.
Remember Pete?
Yep.
Peter Desira used to put that out, and I'd get a phone call saying, Wadey, you've made the national team again. Yes. I was always pumped just to make a national team. And I talked about the transition from the NSL to the national team. We had this massive camp at Olympic Park in Melbourne, number 2. not number one, where the dog track was.
Yeah.
And I was selected for a reduced train-on camp, and I was sitting on the bench, and Kenny Murphy in the middle of the park got injured. He did his knee, and I'm sitting there on the bench. And that's when Frank Harrop said, well, Wade does the same job in the middle of the park, working hard like Kenny did. And that's how I got on. I only got on because he got injured. Otherwise, I'd have just been sitting there like everybody else. I was so far down the pecking order. I'm buggered if I know how I got on, but I did. And the first ball I gave was to Marshall Soper, and he didn't get it. I played it too far left or right, and he gave me an absolute serve. And I thought, yeah, welcome to international football, Wade. Well done. Whoa.
That's brilliant. Who are your typical roommates when you travelled? You spent a long time in the Socceroos, but who did you gravitate towards when you roomed?
Mickey Peterson. I played with him at Brunswick Juventus, played with him at South Melbourne Hellas. We played in the midfield. We had absolutely nothing in common. He liked to go to bed really, really late. I had to be in bed at 10 o'clock every night before a game. We were little and large, Tom and Jerry. We had nothing in common, but we complemented each other on everything that we did out on the park. And so, yeah, that's what you do. When we made the national team, we just, we just back in the... And then Milan Blagojevic. Remember Milan?
Yes.
Best looking Socceroo ever in the history of Socceroos. Don't underestimate his power. But he had the best mullet. But he used to take over the bathroom with all his deodorants and creams, and boy, did he look after himself. I was quite the opposite. I used to hide my money under the soap because I didn't A, have any, and B, wash. All right, maybe a slight exaggeration, but I was exactly the opposite. Just get a shower and get out of there. But again, we were opposites. We just got on famously. We were playing again in the middle of the park. We just enjoyed each other's company. And sometimes that's what makes you click. You just enjoy. You don't have to be the same type of player. Just enjoy each other's company.
So for everything, for every sort of yard that he lacked, you had him covered. The boy could Mickey P ping a ball. Like, I think to sort of stand on a dime, turn, and just switch the ball from one side of the field to another, it was almost uncanny, and he could do it with both feet almost equally as well. That's a skill set. So, like, I think each player had that sort of X factor of maybe what's lacking at the moment. The encouragement of what you call X factor, his ability to switch the play and pull strings. What can you tell me about Michael Peterson?
Well, we were talking about the players I roomed with. Well, there was Mickey P and there was Milan Blagojevic, and both of them had such a good first touch and vision and absolutely everything that I didn't have. And I, on a number of occasions, you just go, how did he do that? Because, like Paul Trimboli, they're the three that I just look at and go, they would tear this A-League apart if they were full-time and they were given the chance to do that. But, yeah, Mickey P, smack a ball 50 yards and, wow, you just stand back. Well, no, you don't stand back.
You're running.
You just go, thank goodness he can do that, because that's why we scored. Thank goodness that's the one that created the chance. Very, very special players. Oscar Crino, Milan Blagojevic, Mickey Peterson, Paul Trimboli. We've all got a million names, haven't we, that we believe now could make it and teach these A-League players a trick or two. But, hey, the older we get, the better we were, right?
The one thing that I think about that South Melbourne side is each year there wasn't there usually wasn't wholesale change. You would just bring in a player or two. And, that South backline was, I think, the basis of what the club, because definitely one of I forever remember those South derbies with either Preston or Melbourne, Croatia. You're thinking 4, 5, 10, 15,000 people, but, small grounds, half the side chanting with the other, just the atmosphere and passion. What did it feel like being on the park, hearing, Hellas chants and opposition chants going on, people calling your name? What did that?
No, they weren't calling my name. No, I don't think they really chanted names. They appreciated it as long as you were giving everything for their club, because their club represented their dad's country or their country. This is how these clubs were formed, because the Greeks came out. They didn't know how to speak English, didn't know how the culture. I know, we love football. Why don't we create a club? And that's how, obviously, it was all born. So when you were playing for their club in the colour of blue, or for Juventus, black and white, with that Italian background, then you were playing for their country. And sadly, those youngsters growing up didn't get the fact that, hey, that was yesterday. That's the reason the clubs were started, but it's not the reason the clubs should continue. And they wouldn't let go of that culture, which I thought was sad. But, we played for their country. I remember there was one time where a few of the South Melbourne Hellas fans wouldn't go to, where did Preston play? Preston
Connor Reserve.
Connor Reserve. They wouldn't go because it meant handing over $10 to the Macedonians. I thought, wow, that's where you're taking it too far. But there weren't many of them, as you say. Some of the crowds were unbelievable. Melbourne, Croatia was big. Heidelberg was friendly. They hated each other, but it was friendly at the end of the day because we were all Greek. But, there was a couple of times. I did miss a penalty, Sasha, at Middle Park against Melbourne, Croatia in the last 5 minutes of the game to win it 1-0. And afterwards, people said, if you'd have scored that penalty, there would have been a riot in the car park. So it's probably the only penalty I look back on and go, yeah, thank goodness I did miss that one. But that's the way they were. They weren't going to let their club be disgraced. Because
let's talk about some of the names in that South Melbourne backline. You had Steve Blair and Ange Postecoglou, Danny Wright in the early years.
Yeah, so, David Healy. Yep. Yeah, Bruce McLaren.
So what was that? I think that was Steve Blair obviously played for many years for South. He notched up, a couple of hundred games. I think it was headbutted even more than that. So what was he like in the dressing room?
Yeah, he was one of the survivors. You know how you said there wasn't much of a transition over the years? The biggest transition, the biggest clean out was 1987 when they just got rid of everyone. Brian Garvey came in and said, right, you, and you get out. You're too old and you probably drink too much. And that was the start of the baby blues because Paul Trimboli came in, David Healy came in. There were a lot of youngsters. And if you look at the 1991 grand final between South Melbourne and Melbourne, Croatia, that back four and that goalkeeper were the reason it was so successful. There were no superstars in there. Ange Postecoglou didn't have the magical skills, but boy, did he get forward and get back. You didn't recognise that Steve Blair was playing until he wasn't there. And that's when you knew how valuable he was to the team, whether it be winning a ball in the air, winning a tackle, organising the other three. He was the one who made it all gel. And behind him, Bruce McLaren, some of the saves he made, They were the days, Sasha, when you didn't get a ball as a goalkeeper and throw it out to a fullback. You got it and you whacked it down the other end. He could belt it further than anybody else. But, yeah, 5 players at the back who formed the nucleus of that 1991 premiership.
And and I think was it 89 that Mehmet Durakovic came in as well, and obviously went on to get 60 odd caps for the Socceroos as well. So also sort of helped in that back line. So what do you think the difference was in that 1991 when you won the grand final? Because Southall was always up there in the sort of the upper half of the table. What was the difference that year as opposed to any other?
Yeah, I think, you know how I said about Brunswick, the happiness is before the goal of winning the grand final or winning the game again. And I talked to Paul Trimboli about this. Neither of us can, other than the Brunswick team that I played in, can remember a group of players who got on so well.
Okay.
Kombutsianis, Peter Salakis, Kimon Taliadoris. Do you know what I mean? These are, we all got on so well. Our warm down was done in the bar. We went into the club rooms and got a souvlaki. And then later on, some of the boys would go out and we'd go and have a pizza. And we just spent a lot of time with each other. Even though we were part-time, we all had jobs.
Okay.
And when we came together, we all seemed to enjoy each other's company. I mean, in fact, Paul Trimboli and I can't remember, it might have been Kimon, they used to play kick to kick in the dressing room at Middle Park because we were so comfortable and nobody minded. You know, although you got some players, right, come on, lads, we got to do this. And then you got Trimmers and Kimon kicking an AFL ball back to front, just going over and over because we were so relaxed.
Okay.
And that's why Puskás was so lucky to get a group of players like that. He recognised that they were so talented that it was like a lot of the great teams. There's one ball, a goal at the other end. I've picked this side, go on, play. He wouldn't get his A licence and he wouldn't get his pro licence, but he didn't need it because he could read the players that he had. He knew the talent that he had. He put them in the right position and then gave them one instruction, play, boys. Just play the ball. Play. Bingo.
So obviously a grade of our game and, you know, where there was the idea to bring Puskás down to South Melbourne, he definitely set the team up appropriately, right? So he wouldn't play players out of position and he'd keep a fairly stable side. What was the message? I remember doing an interview with Con and him saying very interesting, his first address to the team when he came to the side. He was obviously a man of few words, but tell us what was that feeling when he was part of the club?
Never saw him as a manager or a boss to hoping that he picks you. It was like a granddad. Okay. He was just the nicest bloke ever. And he would always play a practice match on the Thursday, but he would always make us shoot every part of every training session. There was a shot at the end of it. So there might have been a game situation, but you had to take a shot. And if you didn't, then you did it again and again and again until you did. And he had some great players, as I said, Peter Salakis, Kimon Taliadoris, Kombutsianis. These players could belt balls from 25 yards and they were given the license to. We used to play a game at the end of it where we had, the crossbar challenge.
Yeah.
And if you play football, you stand on the edge of the 18-yard box or round the D and you chip the ball onto the crossbar. There's no goalkeeper. Puskás used to do it every single time. We'd be kicking balls at corner flags and way over the top. He'd stand there, left foot, and just sit back and go, take a photograph of the crossbar and just go dink, crossbar. Wow, I can only imagine what it would have been like to be marking him. If he could do, I'm not sure how old he was when he was coaching us, but wow.
Yeah, I think he was well into his 60s. But you played a number of games for the Socceroos. And one stands to me where you had to mark Diego Maradona. What a great honour and what a massive challenge. So what's going through your mind when the gaffer tells you, listen, you're going to have to try and nullify Diego?
Yeah. Well, there was no guarantee that I was going to be.
Okay.
And because if he'd have played up front, remember, Jurakovic was going to be marking.
Okay. All right.
But if he played in midfield, I was. And then we'd watched a couple of games before, and he played in the midfield. So the assumption was he was going to, and I was going to mark him.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking of all the things. And the story very quickly is that the first thing I think of is the goal he scored against England and the number of players he's beaten on one run and gone back and beaten some of the players twice. And in your mind you go, well, I just played for South Melbourne, I played for Brunswick Juventus. How am I going to stop that? You know what and I've researched this. I read books. I want to learn all the time. As you start to get older, your TV commitments start to slow down. You haven't had a real job for a long, long time. So I'm learning all the time. And I've been reading books about the psychology of sport. And that story about me marking Maradona fits perfectly with what psychologists say. They talk about ABC. It's about, the activating event. We're talking about stress. You can imagine the stress that I was feeling. So they say, rather than let your emotional mind get carried away with your marking Maradona and you only play for South Melbourne and you're not going to be able to stop him, think to yourself, all right, get a piece of paper and write it down. A, activating event. What was it that triggered this feeling of insecurity and this worry, this stress? B, what did you believe was the danger? Well, the danger is if I don't stop him, they win, I'm going to be a failure. And C, the consequences. Emotionally, I'm stressed. Physically, can't think straight, just worry about that's because I've read that, I now look back on that Maradona thing and go, I went through that because my writing it down was Tomo saying, have a look at his last two games. That was my writing it down. My ABC was just watch him play in those previous two games. Get an idea of what he does specifically. And that allowed me to calm me down a little bit, knowing that, I didn't know whether I could stop him scoring a goal, but I tell you what, I couldn't prove that he was going to smash me.
Yep.
So that was a big thing. And again, I just did it. It happened. So when I go back and I read about the psychology of it all, it fits perfectly. We went to Marconi Stadium the night before just to get us out of the hotel because it was such a big game, just to take our minds off it. The whole time I'm not watching the game. I'm thinking about Maradona. I even went to Mass. I'm a Catholic, right? I went to Mass the night before. And then I thought, he's a Catholic too. Oh, that'll be right. So I can't even win that battle either. So, it's funny.
You actually, I went back and watched the game. You actually did a pretty good job on him. I mean, but the thing is, you let Maradona go for 5 seconds and you can really open you up. Obviously, the reason why he's seen as arguably the greatest footballer to put on boots. That would have been. Did you get a chance to swap any shirts in your time as a Socceroo?
Yeah, I got lots of shirts. In fact, Sasha, that's how I earn a living now. I use those shirts that I've swapped from all over the world, including Maradona's, as props to reinforce the story that I'm telling people that is real, because that's the shirt that I've swapped. The only ones I didn't get were Croatia, because the first time Croatia played an international was against us, and they weren't going to give their shirts away.
Yeah.
They were representing their country for the first time. Yugoslavia at the Olympic Games, 1988.
Yep.
We beat them 1-0. Didn't get one of those. And Brazil, because we got beat 1-0, 2-0, and 3-0. We played them 3 times, and we didn't get a touch of the ball. So they were the only 3 shirts that I wish I'd have swapped. But, yeah, Maradona's was a bit special, but he wouldn't swap with me on the park. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I've just followed you around for an hour and a half. I'd love that shirt. So I walked up the tunnel. All the players had got in. I stood outside that dressing room, and I wasn't moving until somebody brought that shirt out for me. Anyway, I got gutted after a while. I got fed up. Players are starting to walk out of the dressing room. Never mind go in. So I thought, oh, geez. So I went into the dressing room and I sat down, and then one of the officials brought it in and go, there you go. It was covered in sweat, but I went, wow.
Yeah.
Maradona's shirt.
Did he want yours?
What's that?
Did he want yours, Wadey?
Yeah. Good point. No. I bet he doesn't do speaking gigs talking about the 1993 World Cup qualifier.
No, not anymore. So tell us some of the other shirts that you got to get that you thought, okay, I did a good job that day.
Don't know whether I did a good job. In fact, the biggest footballing lesson I got was against a guy called Alexei Mikhailichenko. I don't know whether he was the captain of the USSR team at the Olympic Games quarterfinal. We got smashed 3-0, but we got a player sent off. So we were under pressure anyway. So we got beat 3-0 by Brazil, 3-0 by the USSR. Both of them made the final at the Olympic Games. So it was no disgrace. But I stood next to this bloke.
This is 88, right? This is 88.
Yeah, 88.
Yep.
In Seoul. I'm standing next to this big guy. It looked, picture a Russian. How do you see him? Shoulders that wide, square jaw, blonde hair, just like the Rocky was fighting. That's how you see it. That's how he was. He was massive. I don't know how many touches he got, but he scored 1 goal and made 2. They beat us 3-0. He was just, what a machine. He just ran me all over the park. I was exhausted at the end, so I thought, I'm going to go and get that shirt. Geez, I was so determined to get these shirts. I walked up to the floor that they were all staying on, found out what room, and knocked on his door and said, can we swap? And he gave me his shirt. I don't know. I don't know whether it was the one he played in. Probably not, but he gave me his shirt personally. Yep. So I use that now.
Oh, that's great.
I followed that bloke for an hour and a half.
So back in that day, they wouldn't give you 2 shirts in a game. You're lucky to get that one shirt for the. Yeah.
You've done your homework, Sasha. You know exactly the story I'm going to tell about playing against AC Milan. And if you don't, it fits perfectly with this story. Your question, we didn't get the shirts we wore against AC Milan, one in Sydney, and then I think it was the next night in Melbourne.
Yeah, that's where they cut the game. That was where they cut the game like short for I don't know what stupid reason. Yep.
Yeah. You were probably sitting on your dad's shoulder.
Yes, I was there. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, great. So they gave us that. We were wearing these shirts. We were sponsored by Coca-Cola, and the media called us fluorescent condoms because there was no gold in there at all. So they were the worst shirts ever. Anyway, I think we got beat 2-0 at the Sydney Football Stadium, and it was straight on a flight down to Melbourne to play them at Princes Park in the middle of winter, and a cricket wicket that was that deep in mud. And I remember when we came in Sydney, we'd swapped the shirt. So I had Donadoni's shirt. I think Mehmet Jurakovic had Baresi's shirt. And we're all like, wow, this is so cool. And then the team manager comes in and says, where's your shirts? Well, what we got? We got Maradona,
Baresi, yeah.
Yeah, and he's gone, you idiots, we're playing tomorrow night. We haven't got another set. He had to go back into their dressing room and ask for our shirts back.
Wow.
How embarrassing is that? How embarrassing is that? So we jumped on the flight, went down to Melbourne. Obviously, he's got the gear steward to wash the gear so we could play 24 hours later. But you're right. You probably know the story better than me.
I mean, so
AC Milan down there.
I know Paul at the end of that game got into a bit of strife after saying something. Do you remember how he got sanctioned by the football Australia at the time, or Soccer Australia?
Yeah. No, I don't actually, and I'm serious. I really don't.
Yeah, so he made some comments, but anyway, so interesting. I'm sure the AC Milan boys were that hung up and give the shirt back. Did they ask back for it the second game?
Yeah. No, they didn't swap shirts because they had a flight. They had to leave 15 minutes before the end of 90 minutes to catch a flight back to Rome. So the referee, I don't know who it was, but he's blowing the whistle. We're like, hang on a minute. We know when we play 45 minutes, right? Half an hour goes like that. So we're going, geez, either we're really, really fit or they've stopped this game too early.
Stopped it early.
It was so farcical because the lighting at Princes Park, which is an AFL ground for those who don't know, it's only used for training. It's a small boutique ground. They all were back in the AFL back in those days. So the lighting wasn't good enough. So they had these lights up on these scissor hoists to create more and more light, but they put one of them behind the corner flag. So there's the goal that we're trying to score in. There's the corner flag. We're waiting to find out whether he's taken the corner or not because the light was shining in our faces. It was so embarrassing. Apparently, Baresi got back to Italy and smashed us. Absolutely tore us apart, and with good reason too. We deserved to be. It was embarrassing.
Yeah, sort of I think that sort of typified, football governance at the time. So that just the way that whole, I mean, good on them to be able to attract, arguably at the time the greatest team in the world, to play the Socceroos. So it looks good on paper, but just our governance and everything about it.
We used to play against club sides all the time because nobody at international level was players. That's why I might have played 115 times for the Socceroos, but only 84 of those were A internationals. So we used to play clubs and third string teams, but that's the way it was. So as you quite rightly say, for us to play against AC Milan with Baresi, Donadoni, and all these others, it's like, wow, well done.
You also had a stint. So I think you went across for a little bit at Heidelberg, and then you spent a couple of years at Canberra. That would have been tough from the glamour side of playing for South Melbourne, and now you're in Canberra. But you got a couple of seasons in. I think from memory, there was a couple. Were you part of that game, that 5-5 result?
I was.
You couldn't score, but there was one game, I think there was like 10 goals in a game.
Yeah. It was against Newcastle.
That's it.
Newcastle. Was it No, not KB United. It wasn't Jet. It was Newcastle.
The Breakers or whatever they
were. Breakers, that's what it was.
Yeah,
you're right. I don't know. I think we won 5-4.
No, it was 5-5. It was 5-5.
Was it 5-5? I scored a hat-trick that day, and you know who the coach was for Newcastle? John Cosmina, who'd given me an absolute serve. He just liked to fly off. He was coaching, and he gave me a serve, and I scored 3 goals. And I didn't go over and let him know that I just scored 3, but that was very satisfying for me.
Yeah, all right.
But yeah, I was talking to Paul Trimboli because, as you say, I was playing for Canberra Cosmos. He was still playing for South Melbourne Hellas. And he said, seriously, was that the score? Really? And it was an amazing game. Coming off the ground, the fans were like, do we give our team a hard time here? Because we were down the bottom, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
We weren't going to win the league. We weren't even going to make the top 10 of 12 teams. So to get a result like that away from home, tick.
So looking back at your career, what is it? What are the sort of highlights that you think? Okay, now I've played over 100 games for my country. You know, a South Melbourne legend. I know people speak very fondly of your time there. Being of Hellenic descent, I know that, right? So I was a young teenager behind the goals chanting, right? So, but thinking back at that time, either playing for Australia, playing for South Melbourne, what sort of sticks in your memory?
Wow. Games wise, if I could just make 2 very quick stories. Games wise, we beat Preston Macedonia, playing for Brunswick Juventus. We beat Preston Macedonia in the Southern Division Grand Final to take us through to play Sydney City, like we talked about before, to win the Grand Final. But with about 5, we were losing 1-0 for so long, and then Mickey Peterson, the ball came over, he handled it, it hit his forearm, and he smashed it in the roof of the net. And of course, he's looking around at, I think it was Chris Bambridge, looking around going, did you see that? I hope not. Anyway, he didn't see it, so it was 1-1, and then I scored with about a minute to go. Just smashed it in from about a yard out. So there was hardly anyone there. It wasn't winning the World Cup, but the drama surrounding it was amazing. And the other thing, on a lighter note, South Melbourne played Sunshine George Cross, and George Vasilopoulos, the president, said in the media, the only thing that Sunshine George Cross will take away from Middle Park this afternoon is a souvlaki and a Coke. We're like, no, you don't say that. We were 3-0 down within 25 minutes.
Oh, wow.
We were getting battered. Absolutely. We're going, good on you, George. Thanks for that. Anyway, we came back. I think we beat them 4-3, but Peter Salakis scored the winner, right? Can you remember, if you're standing in the stand, the goal at the right was right in front of that big mound of dirt.
Yep.
Remember that?
Yep.
And that was going off because they'd all turned up. Anyway, Peter Salakis scored a goal, smashed it in the net. I don't know how he scored it. And he ran behind the goal, and all the fans came running down off the hill onto the concrete steps. Now, the cyclone fence was about that high, just enough that, it stopped the fans. They came running down so fast and piled on each other. The whole thing went bang. So we're like, oh, no, quick, get off. There might be somebody dying under there. There was this old bloke. You could see his bald head. Anyway, we're thinking, no, he's dead. Anyway, somebody rolled him over and he just went, rah, hello. And he had the cyclone fence marks all over his face. It was the funniest thing. That was the most disturbing thing at the time. But I thought, that is a moment where it means so much to these people. It was their whole week.
Yeah.
Boy, did we give George Vasilopoulos a hard time. Don't you ever say people can only get a souvlaki and a Coke at Middle Park.
Subsequent to finishing up at football, like in '88, you're also the Player of the Year. So congratulations on those honours as well.
Thank you.
In 2000, you're recognised in the Hall of Fame. I think it was 2000. So subsequent to your playing career, you now speak to what is it that you do?
I guess I'm a public speaker, a motivational speaker. I just tell football and health stories because I've had part of my brain removed. I played or lived my whole life with epilepsy, didn't realise that I had it until just before we played against Maradona. But that's what I do. I took that, and I found those shirts. You know, the shirts I've been talking about, I found them in the cupboard one day.
Okay.
And I, you know, as your media profile slips, you think, well, what am I going to do now? And then I found those shirts and I went, I remember that story. I remember that one. I remember that one. And I've built that. One teacher said to me, you know what? Can you come and talk? My girls, we've got 3 gorgeous girls. Can you come and talk in this girls' school about life? And I thought, I may as well use these shirts. And that was the start. And I developed my presentations, added sport, added my health, because at that stage I didn't know how I could incorporate epilepsy. So that's how it grew. One teacher said, do you mind talking to these girls about life? And then careers advisors came in, and kids at risk, disengaged kids, refugees. I can adapt all my stories, as you can, as anybody can, to somebody's life and make it work.
So you when it comes to playing in the National League, you played at the highest possible level. What I'd like to know, imagine you're speaking to that 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old boy or girl trying to break into, you know, from junior football into senior football. What advice do you have for them?
Yes. I would say you don't have to be the best. You just have to be your best. All the garbage they're telling you about, you've got to be this and you've got to be that and you can't do this and you can't. Just be your best. And if you are your best, in your mind, go tick. And if you get it wrong in a game, or whether it be a pass or a tackle or a header or whatever, or a bad season, just go, I'm going to get the next one. So if you can say those things to yourself, I'll get the next one, I'll get the next one and the next one, and then go, when you get it right, tick, nailed it, tick, tick. That is probably the most important thing for me. I love this saying, don't aspire to be a leader, or don't just aspire to be a leader, aspire to make a difference. And that's all I did. In every game that I played, I made a difference. Sometimes it was that much, sometimes it was that much, but I came off thinking, have I made a difference today? I didn't play for anyone till I was 23, but I didn't care because my whole world was that game on that day. Did I make a difference on that day? Yeah, all right, tick. Did I not? All right, well, I'll get the next one. And that's the way so I would say, don't just aspire to be a leader, aspire to make a difference. Take the pressure off, relax, just be your best, nobody else's.
Fantastic words of wisdom. None other than the great Paul Wade, Captain Socceroo himself. Thank you very much for your time today and your contribution to Australian football, and your subsequent contribution to Australian football through your media, and now your continued work helping with your public speaking. So wish you all the very best.
Good on you, Sasha. Keep up the good work. I've thoroughly enjoyed the last hour. Cheers.
Hey guys, we've come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our wonderful guest. If you like this type of content and would like to see more, how about you hit the like and subscribe button, and have a fantastic day.